Hello, and this is the Project Limbo team. I am Deadly, and I'm here with Fried Pasta. We are the two current active managers for the Metal Fight Limbo community tier list. Our tier list is managed and influenced by over 50 people total, and we have a community of 10 who work on it directly. And here is the latest version of that and a breakdown of it so that you can kind of understand why each part where it is and get some insights into all of the metas in the grander MFB space outside of 0G because we can't really quantify that on a Metal Fight tier list. Okay, so we'll start at the very top with standard. There's only one wheel that is banned in the 40 format, or should be banned in the 40 format, and that is duo. It is good in standard, and obviously it's legal there. It's used as a really oppressive stamina option, and it just kind of works. It's got a lot of defense, a lot of weight, and it's very well centered. So it's kind of the perfect stamina wheel in that sense.
Yeah, it also plays really well into opposite spin, notably. So
Yes. So
it does
we
everything.
Alright, and now that that's out of the way, we'll move on to 4D. So the 4D format is everything but synchromes and duo is on the table. And E230, I don't remember if E230 is banned by default. I'm pretty sure most
Uh,
people ban it though.
E2, I mean, I'm pretty sure like E230 and RDF are in like the same boat as Duo, where they're like generally banned, but they can be unbanned.
Yeah. E230 is,
Also, the combination of Diablo and BD 145.
yeah. E230 is much more of a problem than RDF is IMO though, so we'll move on.
Yeah, RDF is just like annoying as hell and should be banned just to keep the format fun.
Yeah, true. We don't want this thing stinking it up. But so, and for the purposes of this tier list, we are doing the most played version, which has all three of those parts and Diablo post BD 145 banned. So the best part in the format is Flash. Flash hits very hard. It's got a lot of stamina. It works at pretty much all heights. It works low and it works at mid. You don't really want it high because there isn't a point in running it high. You'd probably run it at mid height on like GB 145 or something because of the prevalence of BD 145 even outside of Diablo because it's still very good, and there isn't a ton of tall tracks in the format. So you want to
Other
hit.
things to note.
Okay, go
Oh,
ahead.
you continue.
You want to hit things dead on with Flash. It's got a tiny bit of upper, but it has insane straight smash attack, and it's very good at that. Um, it is an oval. It's very good at being an oval, so it's the best part. Any notes? Any
Uh,
notes, Pasta?
yeah. Yeah, this is like being the premier attack type. The main thing you'll want to do with it is slap it on a rubber flat variant, but because the wheel is like quite heavy, has a lot of stamina, and surprisingly low like self recoil. Um, it's actually quite good on metal flat, so that is another option that you have to run it on
Yeah,
that you wouldn't necessarily have if like we'll get to like Varieras later, but you can't really do that with Varieras.
you can't do that with the other attackers in the format.
Yeah,
Um, you can't really do that with any attackers outside of like two in limited, which is kind of
yeah,
cool. Uh, yeah, on Metal Flat, you'd probably want to run it on like Wing 145 or something, like Wing 145, AD 145, something like that, because they have no interferences with other tracks, and you want that when you're running uh,
yep.
stall combo. So moving on to Diablo. This thing is heavy, and it's got decent attack. Its primary advantage is its weight, though. It is insanely heavy. It's the heaviest non-synchron part, period. And
especially the mid fake.
yeah, especially the mid is like an extra what gram? It's kind
Yeah,
of ridiculous. I don't have a McVick. I have a Sonic Kong one. I'll eventually get one. But yeah. Anyway, ridiculously heavy. You can run it on almost anything that isn't stamina related. You can run it on CS. You can run it on RSF. You can run it on RF. You can run it on just about anything.
yeah. It's honestly like kind of a mediocre shape, but like it's just so heavy that it's able to bully the whole format pretty much.
Yeah. It outweighs Basalt by like a gram or two, and that had to be unbalanced in order for it to be fair, and it's not fair. It was still incredibly broken at the time, and it's still number 4 on in 40. It's still a very good part.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to number 3, Phantom. Uh, this thing has a lot of stamina. It has more stamina than even Duo. However, it suffers from worse weight and a worse shape for recoil, and that is about its only downside. It has ridiculous outward weight distribution due to the plastic PC frame and just a metal outer layer. And no other bay really has that, and it just has a lot of stamina. You can use it. There are three tw- main trains of thought for Phantom combos. Most popular is running it on 230 with either CS, an Aurora CS, or Metal Ball. My personal favorite, which is running it on low stall, I run it on 85 metal flat, and the third combo, which is stock Phantom on bearing drive, just to outspin everything.
I will also note that we didn't say this for Flash, but it applies for Flash too. But yeah, Phantom is also like good enough to where it's like actually a competitive part in standard.
Yeah,
It's by no means a top tier. It's not as like widely seen as Duo
I
at
still use
the
this in
top level, but it's still a very good option.
I use Phantom in
Flash as
standard.
well, but
Flash, Diablo, and
Diablo,
Phantom can all be used
yeah,
in standard. These two to significantly more effect because Diablo's weight gets outclassed in
yeah,
standard,
Diablo.
so it loses
Like I
its
said
advantage.
earlier, Diablo's a little mid outside of just having a stupid weight advantage. So you take away the stupid weight advantage, and it's a little bit mid.
Yeah, but yeah, both Flash and Phantom can be used in standard to pretty good effect. Obviously, they're not duo level. Duo is like probably a staple combo at this point. Phantom is kind of niche. It's very good though. Flash is like like a worst case attacker. If you don't have like Bedgerados squared or anything, you can run Flash perfectly fine and it'll work. But
Also, back to 40, Phantom is surprisingly a pretty competent attack wheel.
yes,
So,
uh,
yeah.
if you so Phantom fun thing, you can run it with the Phantom heads up for a bit of upper. It is probably better at low heights to run this way. You want this way, whichever way this is facing towards your opponent if you're trying to deflect things. But you can flip it over to have like a hexagonal shape, which is actually pretty good for anti-attack. It does surprisingly well, and honestly, I'm kind of surprised by it. Like, even though I've been running Phantom Stall for literal years, I'm always surprised by how much the underside of Phantom actually does. Any more notes before we move on to Basalt?
No, I don't think so.
All right, so Basalt. Welcome to 2012. Uh, Basalt 230 is the meta. It still is in 4D. It's still very good. You run Basalt with 230 CS. It destabilizes things. It's very funny. Alternatively, you can run low RF, which is hilarious, or like BD 145 RF or something like that as like an anti-attack combo.
Twisted Befall.
Yeah, best stock ever released is Twisted Befall BD 145 RSF. Thanks Hasbro. Um, yeah, Twisted's very good. It's also very heavy. It's still the second heaviest wheel in. It's still the second heaviest stock wheel. It the so Basalt has what has been community termed as the Staircase of Doom, in which the inner layer of Basalt has like a descending staircase and has a light spot in one of the corners, making it unstable. However, this actually works to its advantage on a lot of its combos. It gives it unexpected attack power and a decent bit of destabilization property on 230. It literally shakes the stadium and destabilizes the opponent's bay. It's kind of cool. It's what Quake wishes it was. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. Alright. Any more notes? The Basalt's pretty simple. There isn't a ton to
Yeah.
cover.
Small heavy circle.
Yeah. Alright, so we will move on to Scythe. This thing has one trick, and it is very, very good at its one trick. Its one trick is defense. It is insanely tanky. Uh, you pretty much exclusively run it on low RS. It doesn't move at all. It has a decent amount of stamina. Like, if it weren't for Phantom, you could run it on stamina, but Phantom is just better at stamina than Scythe is.
Yeah.
And, like, you can get away with Scythe BD 145, but, like, why? When Scythe low RS is that much better than it.
Yeah. Like, just to elaborate on how it works, it is what it likes to do is abuse the actual like spinning ring gimmick to deflect attacks pretty well, and also like it is just like a smooth circle shape, though it doesn't like direct hits to the metal part as much as the plastic part because of the gimmick, and also it is like surprisingly light for 4D. It is
It
like
is light, yes.
actually, yeah, it gets pretty close to limited weights, though it is far too good to be in limited. Uh, yeah, just carry. It is the opposite of Diablo, where it is
Heavily carried by
a
its
really
shape
good
and gimmick.
shape with like poor weight instead
Yes.
of uh,
If
poor shape with really good weight.
if Scythe was as heavy as, say, Death, it would be the best combo in 40 by a lot.
Oh yeah,
It,
for sure.
it wouldn't even be close. Speaking of heavier than Scythe, Wing. Wing is what Scythe wishes it was in terms of weight. However, its stamina is significantly worse. So it is more specialized as an RSF combo or an anti-attacker on RF. There are
Yeah, it's
those
also
are
a little more aggressive
yeah,
than the other options. So
yeah. It's more aggressive than Scythe or Death. Maybe not Basalt, but it's more aggressive than those two for sure. Um, yeah. Again, two schools of thought for Wing. You run either defense on RSF as a bit of more of a mobile defense type in zero mode, or you run anti-attack on like RF with in one mode, and those are pretty much it. You never run two mode. Two mode is bad. It's still it's still Wing, but it's just worse than zero or one.
yep.
Uh, yeah, there isn't a ton to cover with Wing. It's pretty simple. Uh, anyway, we'll move on to Death. Unless you have any notes, Pasta.
Nope. Ready for death.
All right. Don't take that out of context. Anyway, Death. It's basalt but not round. Honestly, like that's about it.
I'd
It's
say a better like description is that it's more of a diet duo.
or Diet Duo. Yeah, actually no. In terms of application, it is Diet Duo. You use it on the same things. You use it on B145 CS or Bearing Drive. it actually has better opposite spin than duo, but its same spin is quite a bit worse. And
It's also like a pretty weak stat when you're like talking about 40 because like
yeah,
there's literally one opposite spin option that
and
like
it is not very good.
barely it's not very good and most people just don't have.
Yeah,
So it doesn't even like come up. But it is still like one of the few things that is like some somewhat usable in standard because of that. You can
yeah, you can run Death BD
yeah,
145 or like Death Death BD
F230.
or Death F230 if your region is your region is running a lot of Dragoon RDF.
Dragoon. Yeah.
If it's running Dragoon MF, it does a little worse because Dragoon MF can actually KO the latter two. So like, it does very good into Dragoon RDF though. Moving on, Death is Diet Duo in a lot of ways. It's a wall. It's got decent. It's got pretty good defense. It's got decent stamina. It's got It's got better offensive spin stamina than Duo does, but that doesn't really come into again. That doesn't really come into play in 4D. So it settles here at the bottom of Tier 1. These are what are considered the meta options. This is pretty much everything that you will ever see at a 4D tournament. Occasionally you'll see like Guardian or Christ, but not really. Again, most people don't have Guardian, and not a lot of people use Christ over something like Scythe or Wing. Um, Speaking of Tier 2, Guardian is it's not great.
Yeah.
In the same way that Meteo isn't great into attack, Guardian is also not great into attack. And the problem with Guardian, especially compared to, again, Meteo in Limited, is you have to run it tall because all the rubber is on the underside, which is definitely a damper on it. Also, if you want to run an optimal Guardian, you need a Hasbro Eldrago 3. And that that requires you to buy A Guardian and B another Eldrago in order to run it at all. And Guardian is
The
expensive
other
as enough as it is. So like anyway, what were you going to say?
just to elaborate, it's not just that like you have to run it on not like you can't run it on like low track EWD like Meteo. Um, like what happens is that you'll then scrape on the rubber, so that's not good.
Yeah.
That kills its lad. But like the solution would be, oh, just run it on something taller like SA 165 or F230. But the problem is that it's also stupid top heavy, so it's not even that good on those because it'll just topple over early because it's so top heavy.
Also, the most
Uh,
expensive theoretical meta combo is Eldrago Guardian F230. That is
yeah,
a very expensive combo.
yeah. Also, like you're begging to lose an F230 in the Flash
Yeah.
format, so uh, yay.
Yeah, Flash just
But
picks off F230 like no one's business. SA165 fares significantly better, especially on a Warren W2D. However, it's
yeah,
still not very good. It's
yeah. I've used SA 165 Eldrago Guardian a lot. It does not feel great to use. You're at an awkward height where you are going to get punted easily by attack. Uh, you're also like because the rubber is on the underside and not the top, you're not going to equalize very well into like the taller stuff like Basalt 230. So
yep.
what would have been a free matchup for Meteo is not for you
Yeah, it
as the Guardian player.
again, if
And
if RDF is unbanned, it goes like here, but it's not, so it's down there. Because you can run
yeah,
it on BD 145 RDF, and it becomes like the second best thing in the format.
yep. And without that, your best option on BD 145 is Giga Flat, in which
Yep,
case you are playing a very risky game
a
where
very funny
you
game.
could self. It's very funny, but you could self KO pretty easily. You also so you have to mine launch power a lot, and you're also sticking yourself at the ridge in the flash format. So
Yeah, and like as a
yay.
final alternative, though it is in no way optimal, you can run it on RF, BD145 RF, and like it works. It has the defense. It's just like why would you run RF on that over like Wing or Flash or Basalt, or actually Wing or like Diablo? There's not really a point. There are much better things in the format to run RF on.
Yep.
And then we move on to Christ. Christ is okay. It's got decent defense. The main problem with Christ is Scythe and Wing exist, and both pretty directly outclass it, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. It's fun. I love using it, but it's kind of just outclassed, which is the problem. Uh, you'd run it. You can run it three schools of thought for Christ. You can run it on the Scythe setup of low RS. You can run it on the Wing setup of low RSF, or you can run it on the Death setup of BD145 CS. All three work decently well, but
I've also seen it ran on 230.
you can run it on 230 inverted. I'm pretty sure. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's
Yeah,
not bad.
it's
Not
not
the worst,
awful.
but like
It's not bad. It's just outclassed. That's the only problem. And the same can be said for Fusion. Fusion's gimmick is really cool. It has like a really hard rubber. It's almost resin, and it actually works as an attack buffer. The gimmick works as intended. However, again, Scythe and Wing exist, so there isn't really a reason to use it ever. It's still decent. It's still pretty good. You can definitely use it for sure. It's just there isn't really a point in using it over these two. Do you have any thoughts, Pasta?
it looks cool.
It does look very cool. I love Fusion. It's also very funny into 230, but like you can most things in this format can do funny stuff into 230. So that's not a tremendous problem.
Yeah.
And moving on to the attackers, Varieris and Blitz. These two can honestly switch spots depending on what is played in your region. The reason why Varieris is higher on this tier list is because it spins left. However, Blitz does have more attack power. However, with Blitz, the problem is it is very prone to breakage. It is probably the single most fragile metal wheel in all of MFB, second most fragile part behind H145, and it's kind of just a risk to even use it, especially because of how expensive Blitz is nowadays. There isn't ever really a point to using it, to buying it to use competitively. Like, you'd much rather just buy a mid flash for $15
Yeah.
and A, have the optimal version because it's lighter, which means it's faster, and B, it doesn't break. Flash never breaks. This thing is tanky. It's very durable.
Yeah.
Um,
Um
yeah, go ahead.
the okay, so the reason why these things are like worse than Flash is so they hit comparably hard, but the problem is so we mentioned Flash can hit upward has some decent upward before. These things do not have any vertical range. They
Yes.
only hit things at the same exact height. And like if you're a different height, it's not doing much.
Which is
Um
which is fine in 40. If this was limited where there's a lot more height variation,
yeah.
these would be bottom tier. But in 40, almost everything is at mid height, so it's fine. However, the
Yeah.
second thing,
Is they have terrible attack versus attack, whereas Flash has pretty good attack versus attack, and also Diablo is and Basalt are like cracked attack versus attack.
yeah,
Wing as well. So you're just losing. into a lot of the meta. So
Yeah. Again, if like the thing is with these, if duo gets unbanned, they become a lot more competent because of how hard they hit. However, Flash is probably still the better option overall, especially because the third point that Pasta didn't bring up. Flash just has more stamina. It just does, so
yeah,
it lasts for longer. These two don't have great stamina. Barriers can kind of equalize with Duo and Cheese It, which is funny, but not amazing. And Blitz just loses. Um, but yeah, they're not very good, especially because of Flash, and their AVA capabilities and lack of stamina definitely harm them. So on to 4D Tier 3. This is probably the last tier of parts you could get away with using in 4D, though they are in no way optimal. Starting
yeah,
with
and
Big Bang.
I'd say pretty much all three of them have the same thing apply to them. They're just like kind of mid attack options that
Yeah.
aren't they don't hit as hard as Varriers or Blitz, and they still like suffer a lot of the same problems.
It should be
Uh,
noted, however, that all three have significantly better AVA than Barriers or Blitz do.
yeah, but
Especially Big Bang and Fang. However, it doesn't ever really come up because they
yeah,
don't really do a lot into the format's defense types.
yeah, and they're also like it's still by no means enough AVA to be able to handle Flash, Diablo, Basalt, Wing.
Yeah. They beat these two, and that's about it. They beat these two and Phantom. And that's like it. And Guardian, but everything beats Guardian. Yeah, they don't do a lot. they they're they're
Yeah.
they're pretty bad. And so that concludes 4D, and we will move on to what we like to call format purgatory. These four parts, this isn't ordered, but these four parts sit in a format all their own because they're too bad for 4D, but way too good for limited. So the four are Hasbro Scythe, Hell, Destroy, and Omega. We'll start with Hasbro Scythe. Um, so it's kind of just an all-rounder. It's very good at everything in terms of limited, and it has good attack, good defense, good stamina, and that just made it too good for limited because you could basically use it on anything and still win with it, which was a
Yeah, it's
big
really
problem.
weird because I'd say like the best way to describe its shape is if you took Duo and stuck Flash's like metal frame on top of it,
And
because
then widened it.
it is just a smooth circle on the underside that's really good for like stamina defense stuff. But then you just have these two big meaty contacts on top that give it like really good attack.
Yeah. Yeah, you could use it as a ridge bumper, you could use it as a staller, you could use it as an upper attacker, you could use it on BD, you could use it on low stamina. It was just very
Yeah,
good.
you can do it as a like just Swiss Army knife on like CH-120 MF.
Yep, it was very good. So
Yep,
moving on to Hell. Hell is very heavy, and that is the problem.
yep,
Hell weighs more than any wheel unlimited by quite a bit. It also has an insane amount of upper attack and very good stamina compared to the limited. However, it is pretty hardly outclassed by even the tier 3 4D wheels. It was almost immediately outclassed upon Big Bang and Fang releasing.
granted you can like use it pretty well for mid-height stamina in 40 on with BD 145 in boost mode, but the problem is like it is still like the worst BD 145 user in the format probably, or
It
one
is
of them.
the single worst use for BD 145.
Yeah, BD 145 is a very valuable resource in the format, so wasting it on Hell is
Pretty bad.
pretty bad to do because even if you do that, it's just going to be worse than like Phantom. So,
Yeah.
like, what are you doing?
And Phantom can be on 230, so like there's no point in putting it on BD
Yeah.
145.
But speaking of 230, it is very good in Limited Plus on 230 because it
It's
is
raised.
raised. It, which, like, yeah, it makes it really good on 230, but it also takes away the potential for it to be a really good attack wheel because it is forced to essentially just play as a middle height attacker. You
It can
can't
hit up
really
with
run
it
it low
though.
track.
Yeah, it can hit up
Or,
with it
or
though.
like you can put it on low track, but it doesn't function like a regular low track
Yeah,
attacker.
it hits at MTAC heights on low track. It's very funny.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Another funny Hasbro stock, Hades Gill,
True.
100 R2F.
Comp combo. Uh, moving on to speaking of bad, destroy. It's just worse Guardian in every way. It's
Yep,
got worse weight, worse shape, worse distribution. It is just worse Guardian.
yep,
There is not much of note here. All of the problems with Guardian apply to destroy twofold. It is just bad.
yeah,
And then we have Omega. Omega is shafted by 4D, and it feels very bad because there
yeah,
isn't real. Omega is by far the best at what it does, which is undercutting attack. It is very good at it. However, there isn't a place for that in 4D, and in limited, it's broken. So there isn't really a spot for Omega, which is unfortunate. Omega's fun. It's really fun to use. Like all of these you could in theory get away with using in 4D, especially Omega, but there isn't a spot for Omega, especially because of how good the defenders are and how low, especially Scythe, goes towards the stadium. It just it walls Omega so hard.
yeah.
BD 145 kind of kills Omega, which is very unfortunate. In a BD 145 with 145 list 40, it is probably better than all of these wheels. It is probably like about here. I wouldn't put it above Guardian because Guardian's still very good, but it probably goes around here. It's insanely strong at upper.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
But back where it is allowed to be really good in Limited Plus, it is insane for attack because it has really high attack power, comparable to like Pre-Abra Wheel Pegasus, but unlike Pre-Abra Wheel Pegasus, it has really good attack versus attack.
Yes, its upper is ridiculous. It is lightning, but very heavy, basically, and has better attack. There there really isn't a downside to this outside of its smash attack. Its smash attack is pretty bad.
Yeah.
So we will move on to limited now. So limited we have six
Tier 0.
tiers, starting with
Yeah.
the elephant in the room, tier 0, gravity. Oh my god, this thing is broken. You can use it on
Metal Lump.
quite literally everything except stamina, but BD is funny. You can use it on low RF. You could use it on low CF. You can use it on CH120 metal flat. You can use it on F230 circle flat. It is the best use of F230 outside of standard in general. It's viable in standard as an equalizer on BD 145,
Yeah.
which is hilarious. But conversation for another day. Um, yeah, it's very good. It's insane. It's oppressive. It's very good.
It's heavy, it's dual spin. You can also alter its shape a bit with the different clear wheel variants.
It doesn't do a ton, but
Like,
it does
yeah, you can get
something.
away with any of them on any of the combos. It's just like you do have slight optimizations you can do for like whether you're going for a more aggressive combo or a more defensive combo. You have access to a clear wheel option that will modify the shape slightly to fit your needs a little better.
Yeah. Generally, it doesn't do a whole lot. In most cases, you probably want to be running defense anyway, but it works. It's
And
very good.
even the nerfs like banning the like unlimited spin change and stuff don't really matter because in almost all cases you're just going to be running it left spin.
Yeah.
Um,
It
yeah,
general thing for all formats in general. If something can be run left, you run it left. There's no reason not to, because left spin is such a precious commodity in most formats. There isn't really a reason to not run something left if you can.
yeah. But even if this thing was right spin only, it would still be really good because it is still like one of the best anti-attackers in the format.
Yeah.
All
So,
right, ready to move on to tier 1?
yeah, we'll move on to screw. You can go on this one.
All right, this is my baby. I love Screw. Uh, so this thing is really funny because it is really heavy for the format, especially the mid fake. Mid fake is better. Um, it has notably like really good smash attack, really good upper, so it hits comfortably hard. Like it's not quite as hard as Pegasus, but it's still pretty hard. But it has really good anti attack. Uh, and what's funny is that, especially with the mid fake, you can just outspin defense a lot of the time. Um, so it hitting not as hard as Pegasus doesn't even matter that much. Um, it
Yeah.
is one of the few wheels that does like actually kind of care about clear wheel a lot because there are basically two trains of thought where you either want something like Susano to extend the contacts to make it more consistent into 230 or other taller things, or you want something like Uranus
Or like
to
or
expose
like
the slopes
Ares.
more. Yeah, Ares as well. But Uranus is way funnier because it is a genuine competitive combo and optimal in a way to go use Screw Uranus. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You so Uranus is a really good clear wheel because it's tiny, so it literally takes away nothing from Screw's contacts, and it just lets the metal wheel be itself, which is very good. Um, Screw is heavy enough to not require a very heavy clear wheel, which is great, and you can kind of just go ham with it. Um,
yeah. You can run it low track attack. You can run it mid track with like S130, CH120,
I my
and like
person
Flash. This is one of the like metal wheels that is like also pretty good on metal flat.
Yeah, it Screw stock is actually pretty good. It is a pretty good stock combo. Screw Capricorn. Um, I personally run it on SLE 145 RF just because I don't like going into the 230 matchup very well, and my it just covers it, so the rest of my deck doesn't really have to. Uh, the the rest I'll discuss the rest of my deck when we reach each point, but it covers 230. It covers low defense decently well, not amazing. It loses to Baku defense. Um, it beats
I wouldn't even
Meteo.
say it really loses to Baku defense. I think it's
No,
actually
it
pretty good into
no
Baku from my
at mid
experience.
height it gets bounced.
Oh, at mid height,
Yeah,
maybe, but like if you're running CH120, you
I
get to
again
go
I'm
low enough to where it works.
yeah I'm running SW 145 though. I'm at mid height, so I just get bounced.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to move on to Earth. Earth is very good. Um, it's got a lot of stamina. It's got a lot of defense. Uh, Earth RF is probably the single best slept on combo in the format by a substantial amount. it
It's
just
MFL death.
it does not die ever. Um, it is MFL death, but better into the format because there isn't a base alt. There is no
Yeah.
base alt in question to outclass it. Um, yeah, Earth RF is very good. It basically does everything you'd want it to. It can KO Meteor. It can outspin Baku RSF setups. It can. It does not die ever to almost anything. You can get the same effect with a Warren RSF with negligibly worse LAD. It doesn't end up mattering very much of the time because you end up KOing the LAD combos generally, unless it's like lightning. But that's a different story. Um, it's just good. Obviously, there's other setups. You can run it on BD. You can run it on CS, though I wouldn't say it's the best on BD. It's definitely the best CS combo in the format as well. You can run it on an aggro CS and light launch it to also not die, which is very funny to watch. Uh, Earth is just very, very good.
Yep. Though it is pretty fragile, I will say.
Yeah, especially the later.
But cheap enough to
Yeah,
replace, unlike Blitz.
yeah. Earth is a scrap part. You can get a ton of them. Especially the later molds, they're more fragile, which is not amazing. Um, so I run Earth Cetus 100 RSF. My RSF is very worn, and I run it as an Earth RF setup. I launch it very hard, and it just does not die. It's really annoying for people to try and KO it. It beats Meteo, which is great. All three of my combos beat Meteo. I don't like Meteo very much. Um, Speaking of Meteo, what happened to Absorb? 1 second. Oh. Okay, that's fixed. Alright, so moving on to Libra. Um, Libra is basically Earth, but without access to a clear wheel, which makes it a little bit worse. Uh, it's heavier than Earth without a clear wheel, but
But it's
it,
also a little more aggressive.
yeah. And it does suffer from having a bad underside, which Earth does not, making it worse.
Yep.
However, Libra does have more use cases than Earth. It can be used on CH120 RF or 230 RS or CS. It can also be used on bearing drive. So can Earth. They're pretty similar in that regard, and obviously they can both be used on low defense. I would prefer Libra on low CS to Earth because it has more of a bank than Earth does, like how Scythe or Bakushin does. It has more of a bank than Earth. Earth is pretty much just a straight wall, which is not amazing on CS. Because with CS you want to be hit down so that the combo doesn't really go anywhere.
Yep.
There isn't a ton to discuss with Libra. It's pretty much Earth 2. Or
Yeah.
Earth zero point
It's just
0.5
heavy
because
circle.
yeah, it is big heavy circle. It did come
Yeah,
first
I'd
though.
say it is the basalt of the format.
In a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to Flame. Uh this is the exact opposite of Scythe. It is a one trick in the opposite direction, in that you run it on 230 and nothing else. It is very
Yep.
it is good because it is raised and it has a lot of stamina. you run it
Yep.
You'd run it on 230 CS for pretty good defense and good stamina, and a lot of Smash attackers have problems KOing it, so you have to hit up in order to reach the metal wheel and knock it off balance to knock it out, which
Yep.
is the problem with Flame 230.
It is
It
a
is very susceptible to upper, which is its one weakness, really, and it doesn't do amazing in the same height, which can be exploited. by things like Pegasus TH170 or even anti-flame combos like Flame TH170 or like Fire Fuse TH170 or something like that. It has one weakness that can be exploited very well, and that is
Yeah,
about it for Flame.
it is a one trick that is pretty exploitable, but also you very much have to run counterplay to it because otherwise you will just lose. It is very common. It defines the format. It is the whole reason why there is track variance and not just
Yeah,
85 spam.
yeah.
So, yeah.
It and the next combo are the reason why there is counterplay in this format. Most of the other
Yep.
combos can be decently outplayed by skill with your combo of choice. Not these two. And moving on to Meteo. This is the reason you have to run attack. Otherwise, Meteo just wins. Um, it it beats Flame. It outspins Flame in the stamina meter, which is the most boring matchup possible. It is just tinking over and over again. Uh, I am the number one Meteo W2D hater. I do not like this combo. It is annoying. So I run 3 combos that beat it. It it it's simple math. I don't like it. I want it gone. I will make sure that it is gone.
Yeah.
However, the thing with Meteo is, especially on a worn wave-wide defense, you can launch it so that it does not die. Granted, it can still get something gets underneath it, it is getting punted, but if it gets hit head on, it can survive decently long. And it does get a stadium buff by the Shintie and Ali 10, which isn't terribly common. Defense and stamina in general get buffed by those two, especially Meteo though. Especially Meteo.
But the downside to running a Warren wave wide defense is that you auto lose anything same spin, including the mirror.
Hmm.
So, uh, yeah.
Which is why on wave wide defense you kind of want to run Metal Face to have a decent chance in the mirror. Because if you
Yeah. You
outweigh your
want to do that in
opponent's
general for Meteo mirrors.
if you outweigh your opponent's Meteo, you win.
You just
So
bully them.
you can just bully them and they die faster. Meteo's primary weakness is attack, especially same spin attack. So running left spin is very, very good. That's why you run gravity, because gravity just wins into it. And Meteo just, it's very, very good at lat, and that's its one trick. But you do have to play with it in mind, if that makes sense.
Yep.
It is not Flame where you have to have a designated counter. You just have to build your deck with Meteo in mind.
Yep.
Moving on to Bakushin. There are 3 main schools of thought for Baku. So you could be funny and run the anti-attack variant on like Libra or Cetus or something like that with low RF, which is probably the worst variant, but it is still good and it is still viable. Especially in like a one-on-one format, it's very good. And then you can run defense on Baku Leon, like low RSF or low RS, and just have it sit there on Ridge as a bumper. It is the quintessential Ridge bumper combo in that scenario. It does not move too much. It's pretty good. And third, and the most common, and what I use as my final combo in deck, is Baku Stall, which is Bakushin Leon on 85 metal flat, and you just win by outstalling your opponent. It has pretty good
The Swift
defense.
special.
The Swift Special, as it is called. It is pretty good defense, decent stamina, and it can outspin most things. If you're good enough, it can outspin Flame, which is very valuable. Um, it does decently well into same and opposite spin attack, which is important, and you can launch it to do even better into same spin attack. It beats defense, so it's very versatile. It's a very versatile combo. which is why it ends up being used, and it's why I use it. Also, it beats Meteo because you can just flower launch it and Meteo just dies. But all the variants beat Meteo, especially attack.
Yep. Also, just hard for a Meteor to equalize off of it because
It hits metal.
it does not touch the rubber.
Yeah.
One case where Guardian would actually do better.
Yes. So we will move on to Lightning. Um, this is the other left attacker, or one of three left attackers in the format. Um, Lightning I would describe as Upper McGee. It hits up very well. Its smash attack is not great, but its specialty is hitting upwards. It does exceptionally well into mid-height, though you don't really see that very often outside of attack, and its AVA, regardless, is ridiculous because it is very round. So on Lightning,
Despite it being fairly light.
yeah. On Lightning, the main school of thought is run it as low as you can and hope for the best. Though alternatively, I have seen it on 145 with like H145 or R145. Though
And it is incredible into Flame 230 when it is
oh
on
yeah,
mid-height.
it's an
because
instant. It is an insta win into Flame 230.
Yeah.
That is the one problem. When it's low, it can't beat Flame 230 at all. So you either have to run another attacker or something, or two other things that can beat Flame 230 in order to compensate for running left lightning or running lightning at 105 or low track. You can
But
get
it's
away with
also not great to
CH120.
run.
Lightning CH120 works pretty well. You'd probably just prefer to run it at 90 though, or 85.
Yeah. The problem with running it mid-height is, like I said, it's light, and also the shape doesn't really have any real contacts on the underside to use.
Yeah.
So you very much do have to rely on either slapping on something like H145 or SW145 to give you contacts on the underside, or you have to just, like, if you go like CH120, you just have to pray you don't run into anything shorter than your height.
Yeah. You have to pray you don't run into Square 85, basically.
Yep.
Alternatively, you could run R145 or GB145 to add more weight, which does work, though it is not as good as just having better contacts on its underside.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to Rock. This is pretty recent. Rock made a resurgence in around 2023 thanks to Jess, or BWQ, who realized that, Rock is actually good at its intended purpose, which is defense. It serves as a very similar combo to Baku, however, where Baku is more of a passive ridge bumper, Rock is aggressive. You can run it on aggro RSF to have a decent AVA combo, though most of the time you're going to end up running it on low RS and just bump things off of ridge. The thing with Rock, which unlike Bakushin, you want something that conforms to its shape, you want something as flat as you can. You want Orion, Ionis, Herogium, one of those that's just really, really flat, so that Rock's sides can do all of the heavy lifting. Though, there is an alternative combo for Rock, which is mid-height stall, in which case you would run that on like Kerbex or something to potentially destabilize a 230.
Rock DD.
Shout out to Bluesy, hit combo Rock Aquario Delta Drive. It's not very good, but it's very funny. Yeah. So we will move on to Wyvang and Balro. We kind of have to talk about these at the same time, and when we talk about them, we have to bring up Dark Knight. So, Dark Knight is a crystal wheel, and it spins left. Now, unlike Dragoon in Standard, its shape is kind of ridiculous. It can KO 230 at 90 height. So,
Yeah.
the two schools of thought for Dark Knight combos are either run it at 145 as like a traditional, as like banded combo at 145, like RF, or not RF, RSF or RS, and just have like a stationary attacker, or run it at 90, embrace the attack, and watch 230s fly. It's very funny. I
Yep.
personally run Dark Knight Ball Road 90 RF as a fourth combo in my deck if I'm not feeling screw, and it works so well. It's ridiculous. I do not understand. Like, it is one of two bays that can just KO 230 at 90 for some ungodly reason. I don't understand why.
Yep.
And
Not
both,
much else to say.
yeah,
I will say that because it's 0G, Dark Knight stuff does tend to have kind of mid attack versus attack, so
yeah,
like it isn't
it is inherently light,
as
and
unbalanced as it does seem on paper to have a low track attacker punt 230,
yeah,
but
it doesn't do
it's still very good.
amazing into other attack types, but because it's left spin, its only true losing matchup is lightning, and like Bakushin, but that's just because it's Bakushin. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yep.
Uh, so now we'll move on to tier 1.5, which is not quite good enough to be up here, but not bad enough to be down here. These are the meta. This is the good but not used enough tier, in a way. Most of these combos are anyway. As you get further down in limited, the combos become more and more niche, especially this tier, because pretty much only one of these parts is widely available and is used as the most frequent version of that combo. So we'll start with Virgo. Virgo's potential is insane. It is even more versatile than Libra is. It has pretty good attack. You can use it as an anti-attacker on 100 RF. That's a TSO combo, right?
I don't think so.
I don't remember who gave me this combo, but you can run it on 100 RF. It's very silly. You can run it on low RS. Uh, you can run it on TH170. You can run it on bearing drive. You can run it at 230 if you want to. It's just good. It's a good combo. It's a good part. The only problem with Virgo is it's expensive. It's like $150. So not many people have one. I don't have one. I want
I
one.
do.
I'm jealous. um, yeah, Virgo's very good. It is very good. I don't think it's quite good enough to be tier 1, just because of how multi-tooled it is. It doesn't really have any specific strengths. It is probably the best BD user, pure BD user, outside of maybe Hasbro Duo, but it's just good.
Yeah. Also, just right spin stamina is in general just a struggle of a type to really
Stamina
use in the
pure
format.
stamina is not good. Meteo,
Yeah.
I would say, does not count, but it's just not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. That is like part of the problem is that it is an attack format, and also like you're just running essentially worse Meteo if you run regular stamina. So
Yeah. And next we have Phoenix. This is what I was talking about when I mentioned not many people having these parts, as Phoenix is the only one that is widely available. Courtesy of the Hasbro one being pretty cheap, and the TT one, or the Sonicon one, still being on Amazon. Um, Phoenix just good. It's a Dark Knight combo. It definitely hits the hardest out of all the Dark Knights, but at the same time, it has the worst stamina and AVA. It just hits
yeah.
insanely hard.
And the
It's
reason why it's not up there with the other Dark Knight users is the other two are like still really good with like Bandit and such, whereas
these two are
take away
significantly better
Dark
in right
Knight,
spin.
whereas you take away Dark Knight, Phoenix falls down a couple tiers.
Yeah, yeah. These two are pretty much better in general. They have better AVA, better stamina, more use cases. There's way more reason to use these two over Phoenix. However, they're significantly more expensive. Wyvang infamously so. Balro's still $70. It's not cheap. They're expensive.
Yep.
So moving on to Jade. Um, very very defensive. That is Jade in a nutshell. It has a lot of defense and not much else. Its stamina is bad. Its underside is probably the worst outside of its successor, which makes it very funny that you can run Jade A230RF as a meme combo that actually works. And
Yep.
yeah, you just run this thing on RS and hope for the best.
Indeed.
So, yeah, there isn't a ton to discuss with Jade. It is just defense. It gets outspun by most of the other defense types, but it will not lose to attack if the attack type can't get underneath it. So then we move on to Leon. Leon is kind of just right spin gravity. It's not amazing. It has all the same applications as gravity does, except it's a right spin, so it's worse. However, Leon does have a funny application on low MF. If you don't have if you aren't ready for Leon MF, you just lose to it, which is hilarious. It just works for some reason. It just does.
Very underrated wheel. Really like
Very
it.
very
It's
underrated.
cool.
I love Medio. I love Leon. It's also very fun to use. Leon might be my favorite wheel in all of Limited to use. It just is. It's so much fun.
And speaking of Leons, we have
Hasbro
Hasbro
Fang.
Fang.
Shout out to Bro Yito. Um,
It hits down.
it hits down very hard. You
It is
run
a
it.
flywheel.
Yeah. You run
This is
it.
another. Oh, I
Go
can-
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, this is another wheel where clear wheel very much does matter because otherwise there are no contacts above it. So
Yeah.
that's how you deal with 230 is you slap on something like Susano, Gil, Lacerda,
Dragonis.
Sculpio, whatever. Yeah,
One of
Dragonis.
those. Harusius.
Yeah.
One of those wheels.
Yeah, but something notable is that this is a wheel that actually does not like to be ran low height. You really want to run it mid height on like S130 or CH120,
Or
and
the
just
burrito
go ham.
special.
It hits every height, and it has like actually really good attack versus attack despite being a mid height, because it is still like a pretty low recoil side profile.
Yeah.
It's really thick. Um,
So
got good stamina. It'll just outspin a lot of things too.
can I say some
Yeah.
things on it?
Yeah.
So the Broyito combo runs it on SW145. That's also what I would run it on. Its primary downside is execution. You need to be able to launch very hard in order to use Fang, which is a problem, especially compared to things like Screw or pre-hybrid Pegasus, where you don't have to launch as hard to get them to work. It 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 requires a skill cap that people sometimes just don't have, and that can be an incentive to not use Fang. However, with practice, Fang has insane potential. It hits very very hard while still being decent into AVA. It's a good wheel. You should check it out. It's also pretty cheap. You can find the Spark FX one for like $10 on eBay. It's just good.
Yeah, and you
Speak,
got
yeah,
W2D with it.
yeah. Another upside, you get W2D for your media with it, which is awesome. So we'll move on to pre-hybrid Pegasus. Um, Big horse, yeah, it hits very hard. As mentioned earlier, it's probably the hardest hitting attacker in the format outside of maybe Phoenix. Its attack versus attack is bad. This also applies to Samurai and Cosmic, but we'll get to Cosmic later. They don't have great attack versus attack. It's just not great. Um,
Yep, hits every height.
you can shout out to Dan, but you can run it at TH170 and cover everything, which is very funny. Um, I wouldn't really think to run it at TH170, but you run it on 170 height. It covers 230. It covers mid height. It covers low height because Pegasus hits down very hard. It's just good. There isn't much else to say about Pegasus that hasn't been said a billion times already. It's just solid. It's just solid.
Yep.
And then we also have Samurai, which suffers from the same strengths and weaknesses as regular Pegasus, but it is a chrome wheel. However, the downside to Samurai is it sucks on Dark Knight. It is very good on Bandit at low height. It is pretty damn good. Uh, you pretty much have to run it right spin because in left spin its contacts get reversed and it doesn't do anything. Versus something like Phoenix, which has its contacts reversed in left spin and goes insane, or Wyving or Balro, where it doesn't matter. It gets its
Yep.
contact reversed and it suffers. It's not great, and it is kind of just diet pre-hybrid wheel Pegasus. It is a little worse than it at pretty much everything, but it's still definitely competent, and you can definitely run it. Do you have any
Yep.
notes, Pasta?
Not really. No.
And lastly, we will do Has Duo. I'll cover this one. Um, it is probably the best thing to run on Bearing Drive, and that is about it. You can run it on Low Metal Ball, it works, but you'd probably just want to put it on BD. It
I've also
has.
seen it run on 230 by
Yeah, yeah,
Yanni.
yeah. Yeah, it has pretty good stamina. Um, its shape is very good. It's light, which is its main problem, but its shape is very good for 230 because it has a lot of overhang. So it just kind of blocks low attackers sometimes, and they just can't hit it very hard. It has the same upsides as TT Duo, but with none of the weight, which is why it's all the way down here. You can run it on, and unlike Earth or Libra, you can run clear wheels on it because they have full clearance, and they will actually affect things that hit above it. So you can run Gemios or Esculpio on it in order to destabilize Flame 230 and potentially squeak out a win there. Overall, Duo is very good. It's fun. It's probably the best thing to run on 230 outside of maybe Virgo. It's one of those two, but it's good. Anything else before we move on to tier 2?
Nope.
Alright, so tier 2. We'll start with my baby boy, which is Aquario. Um, this and Dark Knight are the only two things in format that can KO 230 from low height. This can KO it by just hitting it very hard and it goes flying, whereas Dark Knight actually like uppers it and it gets destabilized. Both are very fun to watch. Um, Aquario has two main setups. The latter can't KO, but and is probably worse. You can run it on MF as a staller or like GCF, or you can run it on RF as a designated attacker, which is what I did, which is what Shadow Jess again did as well. I've had a lot of success with Aquario. I know a lot of other people haven't, but it's still very good. It's still worthy of being at the top of tier 2. All of the parts in tier 2 are solid niche options. Um, as opposed to tier one, which are the meta, and tier 1.5, which is still meta options, but they're less frequently used. Um, tier two is more so niche options that still see a lot of play, and that is exactly what Aquario is. It's just good. There isn't ever really a reason to not use it if you're good at it. Like I was, I love Aquario. That's probably my favorite attacker, pure attacker in the format. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
So
Fury Guardian time.
we'll move on to 40 Guardian or Fury Guardian. A looks awesome. I love the blue and orange.
Yeah.
And B, there is like one combo for this, and it is kind of expensive. Similarly to Guardian. Fury Guardian's expensive on its own. It's like 30-40 bucks. And then you need to buy the Gold Destroy, either mid fake or TT, both work equally well, because you need the hardest rubber possible for its underside, so you can run it at 105 as an anti-attacker. And now it works very well at being an anti-attacker. However, it doesn't really do much else. It doesn't do great into defense. It can try and outlad them, but it loses to Bakushin hard, and Rock does very well into it. And so it does have some downsides, but it is still pretty solid. Any comments?
Nope.
Alright. So we'll move on to Vulcan. I'll let you cover this one, Pasta.
Okay, so Vulcan is another um, attack option. It is pretty similar to Lightning in that it hits really hard in the specific spots, like at like same height and above it, but no real underside. So you either want to run it low height or you want to run it mid height with something aggressive like H145.
Yeah.
Um, Clear wheel choice does matter for like contact clearance. Uh,
Harusius is probably the best one, though Gemios is also very good. Dragonis is solid. Bixis
Giraffe,
synchronizes with its clear wheel. Giraffe is good as well. It has a bunch
yeah,
of options. It's
yep,
You just need to make sure that this segment of the clear wheel, this front part, is clear so it can hit things.
yep,
That is the important part. Um, you can also run it on stall, which is funny. It works. It's probably better at being a staller than Aquario is. I love Vulcan stall. It's fun to use. Uh, it's it's just good. It's just good. Most of the time, I end up running it at H145 because because that is probably the most coverage you'll get out of it by a significant margin. But it's still pretty good on low height or with a stall with a stall setup.
yeah.
And so we'll move on to Bedgerados. You can cover this one again, Pasta.
Okay, Bedgerados is really funny. So pretty much every chrome wheel wants to be ran crystal up because you are shifting the weight downwards, and also uh, crystal wheels tend to have really nice contacts for hitting above. But Bedgerados is really funny because it's able to hit 230 from like relatively low heights, like 120, and really well because it's just so big and the contacts just stick up. Uh, yeah, so you then want to run it on like Archer or something so that you have like some sort of contacts downwards. Uh, because of that being its gimmick where you are inherently making yourself top heavier, it is not as good as like a lot of other zero G options, but it's still like quite good, quite funny. Yeah,
Yeah. To add, you can still run it conventionally on Dark Knight or Gladiator in this case. Berserker also works decently well, but those are the options for Bedgerados.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's an unconventional wheel, still very good. It's, yeah, it's Bedgerados is kind of awesome. It looks sick. It's pretty good.
Ooh.
So we'll move on to Cosmic. Cosmic is just worse Pegasus. It like in pretty much every way. It's lighter. It hits a little less hard. It has the same AVA downside. It's just worse Pegasus. There isn't a ton to talk about with Cosmic because it is used in the exact same way. You can also use it on TH170, though Pegasus is better for it, obviously, because Pegasus is better than
Yeah.
Cosmic. It's it's just worse Pegasus.
Though compared to Pegasus, I will say it does hit same height better,
Yeah,
but you're hitting up and down worse. So
yeah. I will say with Cosmic, you do probably want to get one at some point because it has the best R2F, and it is the cheapest way to find Hasbro R2Fs these days outside of maybe Galaxy. You do want to get
yep,
Cosmics. Like you'll end up with some Cosmics at some point. I have one. I know I know Pasta probably has a few. You
I
you
have
want
one.
you want to get Cosmics at some point. So the next two I will talk about as a pair, cause they are used in the same way for most of the time, and that is Fury, Death, and Fire Fuse. Um, they're both used as 230 alternatives, and they are the best at that by a significant margin. Both have winning matchups into Flame, though they are worse into everything else for one reason or another. Fire Fuse has worse stamina, and Death has Death has overhang, which can make it more susceptible to getting hit from below. However, Fire Fuse does have a few alternate combos. You can run it on low RS, which works pretty well, and you can run it on low MF, which is funny. Um, but generally with both of them, you want to run it on 230 or like TH170 or equivalent to be able to beat Flame. Any notes?
Nope.
Okay.
I do like Fire Fuse Low RF. That
Yeah.
one is pretty funny. Shout out TSO for that one. Uh,
That was the
yeah.
TSO combo, right? Yeah, yeah.
All right, time for tier 3.
I'll talk
You
about
talk about your child
I'll
now.
talk about the first two because they are the combos that I run that no one else seems to be able to. Thermal. So you run it on wide flat, which makes it the single hardest combo to use in any Beyblade format. Because it's run on wide flat, in order to launch it at full strength, you need to have a very precise launch and get it on the ridge pretty flawlessly. If you hang it for too long, it'll get KO'd. If you launch it with too much of an angle, it will go flying. It's very very hard to use because you want them in wide flat. That's not the hard part. Is getting them in wide flat. You can just buy a Quetzalcoatl or Bakushin and just not use that wide flat. But you want it tuned pretty well so that you don't go flying. But when it works well. You can outstall Flame if you're good enough with it. You can outrun attack, which is very funny to watch. Uh, you beat defense for free, basically. You win into Meteo because you have decent attack power. It just works. The reason it's in tier 3 is because of how high the skill ceiling or the skill floor is. Especially compared to the rest of the format, even Fang, the skill floor for Thermal is ridiculous. It is insanely hard to launch. I've only ever seen two people launch it correctly, and that is because it is me and someone that I taught how to launch it, and that's it. It's
Yeah,
very hard to launch Thermal correctly.
it actually requires like skill, whereas like the next hardest thing probably is Fang, and all that requires is a gym membership.
Yeah, Fang just requires you to be swole. Uh, Thermal requires precision. Thermal requires you to be a neurosurgeon. Shindog could probably launch this bay pretty well. uh,
Yeah.
So yeah, moving on from thermal. Uh, so actually no, I'll just go over the downsides to thermal really quick. Its one downside is its defense isn't amazing, so it auto loses into left spins, which is pretty bad. You can try and light launch it and outlad, though generally you'll just end up getting punted. It loses into lightning and gravity pretty hard, unfortunately, so that is generally thermal's weakness. So moving on to Quetzalcoatl. Um, there are two main setups with Quetzalcoatl. You can run, and both of them involve it just being right lightning. You run it on either low RF or low CS. Low CS to, or not CS, CF. You run it on low CF to get under quite literally everything in the format, which is very funny to watch. It Shout out to Cake, by the way. That combo is ridiculous. It's weak on CS. It gets punted by all other attack types. So if you can't get underneath the attack type, or the attack type is able to catch up to you, you kind of just lose, which is unfortunate. But on RF, it works very well as an anti-attacker, and you can kind of use it as a functional ridge bumper and just hit things off of the ridge. It's this low because it's lightning without the advantage of spinning to the left, which is a huge detriment to Quetzalcoatl. Any thoughts?
Nope.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to Garago and Killerkin. You can do these two if you
Okay,
would like.
so Garago is another zero G option. It's kind of like Wyvang, but slightly less heavy and no funny nub, so it just doesn't hit as hard. Still really good as a Dark Knight bot, but it's not exceptional. Uh, Killerkin is more defensive, I'd say. I've heard like I think Jay likes it on Dark Knight, but it's just not amazing because it is a bit too defensive and just in this format, zero G stamina defense stuff just isn't very good because you are inherently unbalanced
Yeah.
and there aren't really any good crystal wheels to enable a shape like for defense. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else?
Um. So Killerkin has decent lad on Dark Knight, which is like its problem is you can't really specialize in lad in a format with Meteo because you're always going to be outclassed, and it's and Dark Knight can't carry Killerkin enough to be any higher than tier 3. It definitely still works. It's definitely still an option, though in most cases I'd just go for pure attack and run Phoenix or something because you'll end up better off most times anyway. And that moves us on to Burn. um, Poor Burn. Burn is the victim of format meta. It is very, very high stamina. However, pure stamina sucks in limited. It just gets punted by everything, and it doesn't have the attack upside of something like thermal, or even Aquario, in order to validate it being used. It just kind of dies, and it's sad.
Yep.
It There isn't a ton to discuss with Burn. It's just a victim of stamina being bad. And yeah, poor Burn. All right, you want to talk about Hasbro Beat?
Yeah. Hasbeat is so it has a very similar situation to Gyarados where you can have it at like semi low heights and just punt 230. It is really good at punting 230, but otherwise it is just bad Vulcan.
Yeah,
It has abysmal attack versus attack. Uh, the regular like same height attack is not very good. It has nothing on the underside to smack with. It's too big to even make like H145 really work.
Yeah.
It's also light, so you're going to have less weight behind the H145. Uh, yeah, it's just really, really funny into 230.
Yeah. Shout out, I think it was Magic Horse for running Beat Aquila 8145 RF at a Beyblade Midwest, which was awesome. But
Beagle.
Beagle. Uh, but yeah, it's just worse Vulcan in a lot of ways. It doesn't do a whole lot that would make it worth running over something like Fang or Vulcan or God forbid Screw. It it's just kind of a victim of being too specialized.
Yep.
Like by no means is it bad at upper attack. It just doesn't do a whole lot into anything else, which is why it ends up here. So we
All
move on
right.
to the rogue tier. These are parts that in theory can work. They just don't really have a spot where they can. So, starting with pre-hybrid wheel sag. This thing hits very hard. It hits very, 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 very hard. However, it, along with most of the other parts, most of the other attack parts in this tier, only hit dead on. They have no upper and no down. They don't hit up or down at all, which is a problem in limited because you kind of need to be able to hit up, and hitting down is very good. Its straight smash is very good. It's got good stamina. You could use it on low RF if your deck has enough coverage into 230 as is, but there isn't really a case where you wouldn't want to run something else.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on to Genbul, which in limited is just worse Killerkin. It's lighter, it has a worse shape for attack. It's just worse Killerkin. It doesn't do a whole lot. It it's not great.
Yep. All right. Now I'll cover Blitz and Varieras. So, like their 4D counterparts, they hit incredibly hard, but they only hit same height, which is really bad for limited, and also pretty bad for limited is they have bad attack versus attack. Um, the reason why Blitz is actually ahead of Varieras this time, even though Varieras' left spin capabilities are actually really useful in this format compared to 4D, is that Blitz just hits harder because Barrieras now has its plastic shield stuck out. Before they did not matter in 40 because the gimmick made them retract at higher spin and then pop out at low spin, which didn't really matter because you were dead already at that point. You're a high risk, high reward smash attacker. But now they're just interfering with your contacts and making you worse.
Yeah.
I will say, shout out to Angry Face for consistently bringing Hasbro Barrieras to tournaments. Um, it's really funny, but it is unfortunately just not the best.
So, I think the part with the most ability to potentially go higher in this tier is by far Blitz because of just how hard it hits. It hits harder than everything else in the format, and it's not close. The problem with Blitz, though, is that it has awful AVA and it only hits dead on. It can't hit up or down at all. And so, if the meta eventually does end up shifting into a low defense direction, Blitz could go skyrocketing up this tier list. But
Yeah.
as it stands, Flame 230 is far too relevant for Blitz to be any higher than this. I've tried to make it work so bad. I love Blitz in theory. It just does not work in practice, which is a big which is just a big bummer. Uh, so moving on, to Hasbro Phantom. It's just too light. It suffers from the same problems as Burn, in that same spin stamina is not good, but it also just doesn't. It's just also really light. It has a better shape than Burn because Phantom's shape is very good as it stands, but it just it just doesn't do a whole lot into opposite spin, or not opposite. It just doesn't do a whole lot into attack because of how light it is, and that's a shame, honestly. Do you have any notes?
Not really. Just ready to go on to Has Destroy, which it has just like 4D Destroy, it is just worse Guardian because it is lighter, more recoily, but not aggressive enough to be good for attack.
Uh,
Um,
Fun fact that's not so fun. The Legends Destroy, for some reason, even though it should be the TT mold, it is the Hasbro mold, which is
yeah,
very, very funny, but also a shame if you actually wanted to destroy, because it's
yep.
comically light. And it's not the case with any of the Hyperblades ones. They're all the TT destroy. It's just the Legends one, which is very funny.
Yippee.
So now we move on to hit format Project Limbo. Woo!
Peak.
So this is kind of why we're all here. Uh, Obviously, I made this format. I was one of the co-creators, and I've tested this format a lot. So I pretty much did most of the work with with this part of the tier list. But it's pretty. If things can change a lot because of how new the format is, I fully expect some of these parts to go up or down as time evolves. It is an evolving format. It's pretty much brand new. There's a lot of time for change here. So we'll begin with the best part in the format, which is Storm. Now, the thing with Storm is if things didn't hit as hard as they did in Limited, it would be very good. It has decent attack and a lot of stamina, which makes it very, very strong in Limbo, where attack types with stamina are very important. And it works so well as the format's Flame 230 in a way, in that you have to have a designated counter for it in order to make your deck work correctly. Would you like to add anything? Um, you so
Nope.
uh, so really quick. You run storms pretty much stock. You run it on like low RF. Um, Clear whale choice matters a bit, though not not much. Most of it is so that taller combos have a worse time because it doesn't have a ton of upper. Um, you can run you could run Susano, Giraffe. Those are the main two. You can also run like Unicorno 1 or even Unicorno 2 works very well as well. Though good luck getting your hands on a Unicorno 2. Um, Actually Midfig Blitz is out, so that might be a little bit easier. But um yeah, it's just not amazing in Limited, which makes it perfect for Limbo.
Yep. All
So
right.
yeah, you want to do Soul?
Yeah, I really like Soul. Soul is really good. This is the premier stamina defense option. It's round. It's relatively heavy for the format. You can slap it on stuff like low RS for pure defense, low CS for hybrid defense stamina. You can run it on like BD for more of a stamina oriented setup. You can stick it on SR200 for like a tall stamina thing. Yeah, you can do a lot with Soul.
1 second. So yeah, Soul very versatile. You can run it on aggro CS. You can run it on passive CS even. You can run it on RS which is considered the optimal combo at this point. You can run it on bearing drive. It's just good. It's got a lot of defense, a lot of stamina. The mid fake is actually optimal by a lot. The mid fake one is like 4 grams heavier than real soul, which is ridiculous. But it's got a decent shape. It's got very good. It's got very good stamina. It's just good.
Yeah.
So you want to cover Nightmare as well?
Yeah. This is kind of like if Storm is Ryu, then Nightmare is Ken. So, it is very similar, but is slightly more tuned to be more aggressive.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
virtually identical to Storm, but it hits harder and has less stamina. That's about it.
yeah,
They're run the same way. It's basically the same metal wheel. It's just slightly worse because it has worse stamina.
yeah. It may not be the one with the word soul in the name, but this is Soul Bad Guy, whereas Storm is Kai. So
Yeah,
here you go. There are those are the shotos of the format.
yeah. So I'll cover the next two because they're my babies. Um, so first up we have Prehybrid Esculpio, aka the Bell. You run this on low RSF or RB, and it is defensive. It has a decent attack for a defense type as well, which is fun to watch. Um, it just tanks everything. It does have a problem with scraping, but by the time it scrapes out, the opponent is usually dead. So it doesn't generally end up mattering. It is one of the very few defense types that I've found that wins consistently with KOs as opposed to OSs, which is awesome to watch. It does decently well into stamina. Most things in this format do decently well into stamina. um, it's just good.
And it makes funny
He
noise when
makes a
hit.
very satisfying noise. It sounds like a bell. It looks like a bell. It must be a bell. Um, and then we'll move on to Pre-Hybrid El Drago, aka Bazinga. Um, so I was right. Uh, when this format was being conceived, I thought Pre-Hybrid El Drago should have been banned, which was an overreaction. But other people told me that Pre-Hybrid El Drago was just worse than the other left spin options in the format. So I unbanned it, and then I I got a Pre-Hybrid El Drago right before Beyblade West 2024. I threw together a combo at 9 in the morning, left for the tournament 10 minutes later, and then swept the tournament with it. And that is how I won the biggest Limbo tournament that's been hosted to date. Um, it's just good. It's very good at ridge bumping. It spins left, and unlike Russian Assault, which are the other two left spins in the format, it has a decent shape for defense if you want to run it in that way, though most of the time you're going to end up running it on RF. It has really good upper. It's an auto win into things that are taller than it, which is awesome. And it's just good. It's 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 a little worse than like Soul or Storm because its stamina's worse, but at the same time, it can do so well into them that it oftentimes just doesn't matter. All of the parts in tier 1 could be considered the best part if the meta shifts just a little bit.
Hmm.
All right, so you want to cover Killer and Gemios?
Yep. So, okay, Killer is our first like stamina option. It is good. You can run it on stall, you can run it more stationary. It works on BD. Though oddly enough, its best combo is like a weird balance thing with like a C on low CS, but of like a certain wear condition where it can go aggressive if you want it.
Yeah, you want
Um,
shout out to shout out to Blader Gem. Uh, Killer Aggro CS is an all-rounder. It is one of the very few all-rounder combos in Beyblade. Um, I'd say that's it and like Wiving Dragoon, and
Yeah.
that's about it. Um, it just works. It it's it can attack, it can defend. It's got really good stamina because of Killer. It's just good. Obviously, you can
Yeah.
run it on Bearing Drive. It's probably the best use of Bearing Drive. And yeah, Killer's just solid.
All right. Now then, we get to Gemios, which introduces probably my favorite type in the format, the Wall Breaker or Glass Cannon. Because what it does is it just runs fast and hits hard. You don't have attack versus attack. You are terrible at it. But you just punt everything.
You can also
Um,
you can also punt attack, which is very funny to watch.
yeah,
But
that is
but
just
you do
how
have to
hard they
get
hit.
very lucky though.
Yeah, you have to get really good positioning. But um, and specifically with Gemios here, you can run it on final drive, and it's actually really good because it just hits so hard that you can actually take advantage of the gimmick and just have more chances to just hit something out. And yeah, I think that's really cool and really funny.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
No, it's the best of the wall breakers in the format, and there really isn't. It's very simple, but it works very well.
Yeah.
So moving on to Cyclone. Shout out to Cindercast. This is Upper McGee. Uh, it of the format. It hits up very well. It is even further min-maxed Storm, in the case that it trades even more of its stamina for the ability to hit up, which makes it very good into things that are taller than it. And you can run it on R2F for a speed build, which does work pretty well often. Um, it's got decent smash attack or decent downward attack, though it doesn't really come up very often. Though it can, especially if you're running it at like 105, then sometimes it can just ground pound into like a Scorpio or something and potentially cheese a win. Um, yeah, it's just good. Again, it's like Nightmare. It is a more it is a more tuned Soul or more tuned Storm. However,
Yeah.
because it loses even more stamina, it's worse. So it's like you can still definitely use it. You can use Storm and Cyclone as two different types of attackers. Cyclone is the closest to a wall breaker of the Storm likes, though it definitely isn't. It is not a Gemios. It is a lot safer than a Gemios to use, and it has decent attack versus attack. It just works.
Now then, we get to Pisces,
Yeah.
which personally, I think the design is really cool, but I don't really like using it because it is Imagine Killer, but way too much recoil. It is too easy to punt. Even defense types just like can get rid of it. Um, you can use it on BD, but it's really easy to KO. Um, I know it's some people really like it on like low metal ball. Um,
The
I've
best
even heard of
yeah.
like flat sharp
Well,
as like an option.
the best use I've found for it is flat spike on something
Yeah,
really low, because Pisces hangs down so much at 2 points. It can actually use the spot's recoil to stay alive longer, and its stamina is so
yeah,
big that the loss of spin doesn't matter a whole ton.
yeah. That is why it is still in this tier, despite like being so poor
It's
defensively. Is
yeah,
that it is just such good
its
stamina.
stamina is insane, and it has pretty good attack as
Yeah,
well. It is probably the best thing to run as stall outside of another combo we'll discuss later, but it does have a pretty bad weakness to attack, which is its problem. Its defense is very shoddy.
All right, ready to go tier two?
Yes, you get the first one.
Yeah. This is one of my premier discoveries here. Wolf. This is another wall breaker, and it is like Cyclone, more of an upper attacker and not a smash attacker. So, uh, yeah, it just gets under things and smacks them out. It is really awesome, really funny. Wolf is really cool. It's small. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
not too much else to say. It's just a really good wall breaker.
Mhm. So, Infinity. This is where this format gets weird. It is the Flame 230 of the format, but since 230 is banned, you have to run it at SR 200, which makes it worse than 230 would be. Um, it is a good thing 230 is banned, otherwise this format would be unfun. Um, the nice thing about SR200, Infinity SR200, is it's consistent. So a lot of people like running it because of that. Um, however, it loses pretty hard to a lot of attack types because of 200 SR200's ring. If the attack type can hit up, it doesn't do terribly well into it. And um, El Drago and the Meteos are an auto loss because it cannot survive being hit by a left spin at all. Um, it beats defense types. It beats Soul. It beats Esculpio. It beats like Killer on CS. It does decently well into Storm, which is nice, but Storm can still beat it. It's just flawed. That's its main problem. It is flawed Flame 230.
All right, now we come on to another discovery of mine. Dark. This is a really nice defense option. I'd say it is worse stamina wise than Soul, but it is like kind of higher defense. It is a little more angry, but yeah, it's just a good defense option.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about Dark?
Yeah, unlike Soul, Dark has its clear wheel exposed, so you can actually do some funny shenanigans with the clear wheel. You can run like Capricorn to run as a grader into things like Infinity, which is very funny to watch. Though it does just have worse stamina than Soul, which is unfortunate, but it's still very good.
You want to talk proto
I'll talk
nemesis?
about Hasproto. So Hasproto is like a turtle in a way. It has a lot of defense. It doesn't move a whole lot, but its stamina is not very good, which is unlike a turtle, I guess, because turtles live forever. Um, it it's just very it just bounces things because it has it's sloped, so it just slopes upwards. Its problem is it's light, so it can sometimes just end up getting punted, which is a problem. And it also is top heavy, so it does not do as well as something like Bakushin or a similar combo would. But it's still very good. It is probably the best shape for it in all of Metal Fight. It's just comically light. Its stamina is also not
Mm-hmm.
great. I'll talk about the next three, or next two as well. So Gargoyle is a pretty stamina heavy attacker. It is the best of the 0G attackers in format. You'd run it on Gladiator, not Archer, which is surprising, because Gladiator lets it expose its metal contact points to being above to hits from above. It's like Uranus on like Screw or something. Um, it just works. Uh, it has decent stamina. Gladiator hits up pretty well. It hits straight pretty well as well, and it hits down decently. Though generally you'd be running it at like 105, so it doesn't come up too often. Um, its defense is decent. It's got decent AVA, but it's not. It doesn't really have anything on Storm or like Nightmare, so it does lose those matchups. It does beat Wall Breakers though, which is always nice. And then I'll talk about Fury. This is my discovery. Fury's a staller. uh, it functions similarly to Bakushin, however, its weight distribution and overall weight are significantly worse because this is Limbo. Uh, it works as like a bumper staller, and it does its job very well. It doesn't have the downside of Bakushin in that it can scrape sometimes because it's flat on the bottom, which also means it doesn't have any defensive weaknesses down there either. It can be hit down there perfectly fine and not really worry about it. Yeah, Screw you generally want to run, or Fury you generally either want to run it on like Aquila or something to have a little bit of upper, or just a round heavy clear wheel to maximize on stamina. Any comments about either of those two before we move
Nope.
on to the medias, which are
I can
all
talk
yours?
about the medias. They are pretty much the same. They are just left spin attack options, but they are not as good at just like they can't really get under things like Priamber del Drago. They aren't really good at equalizing either. They're not
They're
amazing,
yeah,
not bad. Um, I will say Rush is a little more consistent. It's a little better,
yeah.
but Assault has like some big smacks on the big contacts, but it's less consistent because outside of those, there's it's just flat sides, so you're hitting it with a wet noodle essentially,
Yeah.
and you don't want to hit with a wet noodle.
Honestly, neither of them do a ton. Meteo in limited is heavily carried by Absorb. Absorb is broken. Uh, the Meteo metal wheel is pretty bad. It it sucks. Um,
Yep.
this is how far some decent clear wheels can carry it. Like if it had a worse clear wheel, it would be even lower. You want to talk about
You
Inferno as
want to do
well?
yeah, you can do Inferno.
All right. Inferno is the third wall breaker. It's a little worse than Wolf in that its little niche is that it can hit down. Um, it's a lot lighter than the other two as well, and the way you would use it is a little weird because you kind of have to run it on 90, but because of how raised Inferno is, it can still hit things like Infinity despite being lower than a wall breaker otherwise would be. And it's kind of just an odd metal wheel. It has good outward weight distribution, but its weight is horrible, and it's very, very recoily. It's interesting to use. Shout out to AJ for making this thing work from my region, not the other one that you might be thinking of. Um, yeah, it's that's the reason why it in Proto. That's the reason why Proto isn't tier 2 is because AJ makes this thing look divine, but it's just good. It's nothing terribly special outside of its weird properties. It's not a lot. It's nothing to write home about in the attack department. It's not like Gemios, which hits ridiculously hard. It hits pretty hard. It hits harder than anything else that isn't Gemios or Wolf, but it has weaknesses. It's nothing terribly special. Anything else?
Nope.
Yeah, the reason why you wouldn't run this on 230 is because a better option exists, and there really isn't a reason to, especially because of how recoily it is. You wouldn't run it. Well, A, Infinity exists, and B, Forbidden exists. There's quite literally no reason to ever run it. On 230.
Yeah.
And then we'll
All
move on to
right.
Ray. Go ahead.
So Ray is the actual kind of do everything wheel, jack of all trades, master of none. It's got okay attack. It's got okay defense, okay stamina. You can stall with it. You can throw it on RF. You can do a lot. You can throw it on BB. But I'd say the best combo to let it do a bit of everything is genuinely just stock Ray Gill 100 RSF. Even down to the clear wheel choice of something like Gill, because that is something aggressive, so you will be able to grind SR200.
Al-
uh,
Alternatively, you can run it on CH120 or a 125 height to do a little better into 230 and have
yeah,
negligible differences into other attack types, which is probably optimal, but running stock regular is very funny, so I don't see why you
yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah.
uh,
Uh,
Anything else before we move
ready
on?
to. No.
Okay, so Bahamdia. Bahamdia is large. It is the single largest chrome slash metal wheel released by quite a bit. It has a pretty good shape, all things considered, for attack. Um, it's just light, which is its main problem, and its weight distribution is shoddy at best. Um, you run it with Archer so that it can hit up, as you do with most, as you do with most chrome wheels that aren't Gargoyle. Um, it's just competent. It's just a competent attacker. It takes up a lot more space than most things in the format, which is nice. Outside of like Haswing, which I'll get to in a second, but it's just nice to have. It's decent. There isn't really a ton that's special about it other than its size. It's kind of just a worse Gargoyle outside of that, especially because Gargoyle has significantly better AVA. And yeah, that's about it for Bahamdia.
All right.
On to
Grand.
Grand.
So this is another kind of stamina defense option similar to Soul, but it is much worse because it is lighter. Has surprisingly good upper though for
Yeah, you
what
can
you'd think
you can run it
being a
as an upper attacker, which is very funny.
yeah,
By the way, shout out to Mago. His copy of Grand is apparently cracked and has ridiculous balance tuning. So it can outspin almost anything. like, it can outspin Soul. It can outspin anything that isn't a stamina combo.
yeah. It's it's got a lot of good qualities, but it's not great. It's just fallen off since like the start of the format where it was like one
It
of the
was the
poster
face of the
childs, kind
format.
of like yeah, it and Ray were have been the
Yeah.
biggest losers so far, but
Mostly
they're
it's
still
because the format.
viable.
It's mostly because the format got a little more specialized into storm likes, and Ray
Yeah,
is kind of just a jack of all trades. Obviously, they're in tier 2. They still work tremendously well, but
yeah,
there's just better options, unfortunately. It's they're not outclassed. Well, Ray does everything, so it can't be outclassed. But Grand is kind of outclassed by Soul, unfortunately, unless you're Maga's Grand for some reason. But yeah, it's kind of just good. It it doesn't
ready to
have a
go
ton
to
of
wing.
weakness. Yeah, I'll talk about Haswing and Galaxy, and then you can cover Forbidden. Um, Haswing, shout out to Kings. Uh, this thing is interesting. It's quite large, so it serves as a decent bumper, like it does in 4D, but you have to run it on something aggro in order to make up for the weight difference. Generally, that means aggro RSF for me, and the combo I use it on most often is S130 because its underside is still good, and it can use the contacts that it actually has down there to do damage. Um, it also on 130 is a big pest for SR200. That'll come up over and over again. If it's a pest for SR200, it's pretty good. Um, it's kind of just solid. It's very similar to Ray in that it's a jack of all trades. It's got good attack, good defense, and good stamina. And though it doesn't have the versatility of Ray, it's very good at all of them on one combo. And then, before we move on, do you have anything to say about Wing?
Nope.
Okay, I'll move on to Galaxy. Galaxy is a plastics compact combo in Metal Fight. Shout out to Abelia for coming up with this, but if you put it on R2F and like mid height, it just wins AVA. It just wins attack versus attack for free because you can just outspeed everything because of how light it is, and just catch up and knock everything out, which is fun, and works surprisingly well. Galaxy's shape is very, very good as well. It The one problem Galaxy has is it's very light, and that is about it. It's like the third lightest wheel in all of Metal Fight, which sucks for it, but its shape is very good. Generally, you'd run it on mid-height R2F, and try and outspeed other attackers, and it does well into Infinity, obviously, and yeah, it's just good. It has potential to go even higher as it progresses. It's already moved up from Rogue to here, so we'll see how far Galaxy can go. Anything before we talk about Forbidden?
Nope.
All right, we'll move on to Forbidden.
So Forbidden is kind of, it's actually like one of the more viable things in Limited, I'd say, because it is kind of like Flame, where it is that raised shape, and that is what it does here, is you stick it on the tall track because it is raised. The problem is that it has these little nubs on the middle of the blades that just stick down, and things will tap those, and it'll die.
Yeah.
So
Flame doesn't have
yeah,
them. Infinity doesn't have them. So it just kind of is worse than them, which
yeah.
is unfortunate.
But like everywhere else on it, it is more raised than Infinity. So, yeah,
It's good. You can definitely get away with running it on SR200 for sure.
yeah,
If you have a Forbidden, try it on SR200. You can also try it on low RF, which is funny, but generally try it on SR200.
yeah.
Okay, so Limbo Tier 3, you get Jade. Have fun.
All right, Jade. Remember what we said about like Inferno as like the it hits down wall breaker? This is the like weirdest strange child that only hits down because it has these giant nubs beneath it. Otherwise, there is nothing. It is a pancake.
It is a light
And
pancake.
yeah, it hits hard, but you're also hitting down. You're hitting but more so, you're hitting yourself up. It is pretty detrimental to itself, but it can work.
Yeah.
Uh, it is
So
just not a very good wall breaker.
the thing with Hasjade is if anything's at the same height as it, nothing happens. If it's hitting down, A, it's punting itself, and B, that thing is gone. So Hasjade has the nickname of Destroyer of Walls because it quite literally put a dent in my door when I was a child. Yeah, don't run Hasjade on 230, by the way. That's a bad idea. So moving on to Ephraid. Ephraid is very similar to both Gargoyle and Bahamdia, just slightly worse. it definitely has the highest attack potential of the three, but its stamina suffers the most from being a Chrome Wheel. It's not terribly balanced, but it's it it just it's just a worse gargoyle in pretty much every aspect, which is unfortunate because Efraid looks very cool. Anything to add before we move on to Griff?
Nope. I'll let you also have the floor with Griff. Griff.
Yeah, and then you get the next two. So Griff is funny. This thing, you know how Wyvang has a spike? This also has a spike. It's very big. However, the problem with Griff is the spike is so big you have to run it at like 160 or it literally is too big to hit things. But 160 Griff is one of the funniest combos to watch because it has the upside of Jade without the downsides because its contacts on the sides are significantly better. But A, you have to run it on 160 height, and B, its stamina is much worse than Jade's. So it does suffer in that regard. But Griff is very funny. You should try Banded Griff to A230 RF in Limited just once and cry at how well it works for no reason. That is all I have to say about this combo.
All right. Now then, Dragoon. This thing, it's fins left, but you'd have to be chrome up, which is not very good. Otherwise, it's just a mid shape. It is a very mid chrome wheel. It doesn't do anything particularly well. It's not particularly horrible in any aspect, but it's just...
Yeah, and that's why it's in tier 3. These aren't great, they aren't bad, they just don't really do a whole lot. So moving on to you get to Divine as well. I'll cover Pre-Harbor Capri.
I'd rather cover
Okay.
Capri.
Alright. Divine is better counter. It's a little heavier. It it has a slope. They're both just everything that Pre-Hybrid Leon is. These are but very diet. They're much lighter, and they're versatile. I'll give them that, but they don't really do much of anything in any format that they're in. But sometimes they'll just randomly pop off because people aren't ready for them.
And they can also just smack things with good clear wheels.
Yeah, you run like Dragonis on counter or Divine. It's pretty good.
All right, now Capricorn. This is just worse Fury. This is probably the only case where the Hasbro Legends one is actually better than the real pre-hybrid.
Yeah.
Because the integration of the clear wheel forced them to actually make the weight distribution less god awful. So it's a pretty bad staller. Also, clear wheels let you modify some contacts and stuff. And yeah, this could have used a clear wheel for better contacts. Yeah, it's very pretty. Unfortunately, it is just not very good. It is not unusable, but it is just not great.
If you don't have a Fury, try stalling with Pre-Hybrid Capricorn, then imagine that but better. It's just okay. Its weight distribution is horrid. It's very centered, which is not good. Pre-Hybrid Capri's or Fury's isn't much better, but it is better. It is definitely better enough. And the addition of a clear wheel helps a lot with Fury's viability. So Revisor. This is the one time ever that that a Synchrom system part is used for defense, and it actually works. In theory, its defense is better than everything else in the format. However, its stamina is god-awful, and it gets outspun by almost all of the attackers in format. I think the only attackers it can consistently beat are the left spins because it can outlad them on the correct setup. But like at that point, why not just run something else? Like why not just run like Ray or Wing, because they can do that too.
Soul.
Or not Soul, but run one of the RSF defense types like a Scorpio or Ray or Wing or something like that instead of Revisor.
Yep.
Like in theory, Revisor's pretty good, but yeah.
Okay, now time for Bubba Bowl. Pre-average Bowl is it's an attacker. It
Of all time.
should, in theory, hit pretty hard, but it's a bit inconsistent. It should have nice upper attack. It should have nice smash, but it's just not great.
Yeah. So Bull, Hyper, and Counter are what I like to consider the inconsistent trio. Divine kind of makes it a quartet, but it's a lot better than Counter. Or not a lot, but it is definitely better than Counter. So it gets higher in the tier. They're all still tier 3. They're all still usable, but not great. Um, Bull is interesting. So there's two setups for Bull. You can run it at low height as like an upper attack thingy, or run it at T125 for the quote unquote infamous Tornado Bull combo. Which, like, it works, sure. Why? Why would you use it though? The the problem with Bull, Hyper, and Counter is they're all incredibly inconsistent in their own format. Like they're all incredibly inconsistent. There's no point in ever using them unless you have nothing else. In which case they're fine. Like they're still competent combos. Don't get me wrong. Um, and again, don't let what we're saying dissuade you from trying them because this is still a very new format and a lot could change. For all we know, hyper's the best part in the format, and we were all wrong. But for now, they're just kind of mediocre. They're inconsistent. They're not great.
All right, ready to go to Rogue?
Yeah. I'll just touch on Hyper and Counter really quick. Hyper doesn't have the upside of Aquario, in which it can be used as a staller because it has good stamina. Um, its contacts are worse. It's not amazing. A lot is dug out to make room for the clear wheel, and unlike pre-ordered Capricorn, Aquario's weight distribution is very good. It's very good. It's near perfect weight distribution for its shape, but it just doesn't really translate with Hyper in a lot of ways. It suffers from cyber disease in that to make room for a clear wheel, its contacts were lessened, but it's also just kind of worse. It's not as bad as Cyber is, but it's not great. So now we'll move on to Rogue.
Yep.
You want to do Cyber?
So speaking of Cyber Syndrome, we have Cyber. This is just very worst pre-hybrid Pegasus because it just doesn't really hit much at all. It can work for attack, but it's just not great.
Yeah.
There isn't much to it. You want to add anything else?
Uh, Jay thinks it works. I'm sorry, man. It just doesn't. Like
Yeah.
feel free to try it. Again, we could be wrong. It's just too light. Its shape sucks. Its aerodynamics are awful. It's just not a good part.
All right. Now then, Hybrid Ares. This is a part that I have tried to make work, but it just doesn't really. In theory, it has nice upper attack. It has a very similar shape to like Kid Dragoon and Dronzer GT from Plastics, but it just doesn't. It's just too light. Weight distribution is not it.
Yeah, the weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the pre-hybrid weight distribution is not very good because of how they built them. A lot of it was distributed towards the middle, and they ended up being pretty bad. Uh, so we'll move on to Erosia and Golem because they are very much so two peas in a pod. Um, they're both just kind of not great. Erosia is like a defense thing. It has even worse stamina than Revisor somehow, and it just doesn't work. It like I've tried to make Erosia work on numerous setups. It just kind of dies. Its weight distribution's bad. Its stamina, despite being a stamina type, is worse, and like it just does not work. And then there's Gurm, which just doesn't have any sort of specialty at all. It does nothing unique in any way. It it
Its
just
most unique trait is the lime green paint, but even there, it's outclassed by Proto Nemesis.
yeah. It just does nothing of note at all. And then we
Shout
have
out Gorum Gaming.
AKA basalt spam. But yeah.
Yeah.
Um so last in the rogue tier, but certainly has the most room for improvement is Knight. Uh its stamina is very good. Its only problem is it is abysmally light. It is like 28 grams. This thing is a paperweight. It weighs nothing. It's yeah, it gets punted by everything. Killer and Pisces heavier stamina parts that also kind of have worse stamina are just better. It just doesn't do anything. It I wish it did because Knight looks so cool, but it just has no stamina of any, or rather, it has no weight at all. Of the lightweight parts outside of Galaxy, it is definitely the only competent one, but it just weighs next to nothing, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's just sad. So we will move on to the tier that you probably should not use ever, the unusable tier. Uh,
Yep.
do not use any of these parts in a non-standard setting or non-zero G setting because Saramanda works in zero G a little bit, but don't use them if you want any level of compatibility. Especially the bottom three, they are actually abysmal. So,
Yeah.
you want to do Saramanda?
You can do Saramanda.
All right. So Saramanda is comically unbalanced. It weighs next to nothing. Its contacts are awful, and it just kind of dies. It's even more unbalanced than like Phoenix is, which is not very good outside of the zero G stadium. And it kind of just is sad to see that it doesn't work. It just does not. E-Freight is better. Like Gorham is better, and Gorham doesn't do anything special. It just doesn't work.
All right. Now we have Mercury. Mercury is really pretty looking, and it's best that you keep the paint on because there's nothing there to use. It has kind of a Bakushin shape, except it's super light, and also it has like these two big gaps cut out of it to give it big contacts that are not usable for attack,
Guys,
just
it's an
usable for the
attack.
opponent to attack to punt you.
It's an attack
Uh,
type. I swear. No, no, it's
yeah,
not.
it is
It's also
stinky poo poo garbage. Put it back on the shelf.
its weight distribution is also horrible. By the way,
Yeah,
it actually has worse weight distribution than pre-hybrid Capricorn, which is an achievement. But yeah,
yeah.
it's just not good. So, and next, the hate watch begins. We have Poison. I hate this part. It is awful. It does nothing, and it proves that barrage attack is a useless concept because it does not work. It has gaps. The gaps don't do anything. It's really light, and it's just bad. It also has a comical amount of air resistance for no reason. It yeah, poison sucks. It, its weight distribution's bad. It's pretty much everything wrong with Beyblade, with the MFB system, with the Hyper Wheel system in one metal
Yeah.
wheel. The one thing it has going for it is that it's like 32 grams, which is not a lot, but it's more than the other things in this tier.
All right. Now then, we have Forge from, as seen on Hit Combo, Forge Herogium M145MS.
From
Um,
hit Beyblade sensation Unicorno Extreme GT.
Indeed. So, remember how bad Pre-Hybrid Ares was? Just imagine that, but like without any of like the minuscule amount of redeeming factors that wheel had. It has worse contacts, worse slopes, it's lighter. Uh,
It's
Clear wheel contact doesn't even save it because it is just such a bad shape.
and the clear wheel
Uh,
contacts make it worse. Like the best clear wheel
yep,
on it is
they,
Uranus.
yep, it because even Uranus kind
even
of interrupts the shape of the slopes.
even Ares, the wheel that it was made for, interrupts the shape of the slope.
Yeah, it is. Oh, god awful. Uh, just don't touch it.
So last and certainly least is the single worst metal wheel ever released, Midnight, aka Crash. This thing certainly does crash. It's not good. Um, it uh, it has a ton of recoil. It is the single lightest metal wheel. Period. Uh, it it has minuscule attack power for its recoil. It has no upper. It has no smash. It just doesn't do anything at all that would make up for it being the single lightest clear wheel ever released. It's not like the thing with both the thing with Galaxy compared to these two, its shape is incredible. These two have awful shapes and the bad weight. There's nothing redeeming about either Torch or Midnight, aka or Midnight slash Crash, at all. There, it just avoid these two. Avoid these three. I know I said earlier to try experimenting. I've tried. They don't work.
Avoid these five.
Mercury might be able to work. Saramana might be able to work. Maybe they might move up
Yeah,
to Limbo Rogue. Avoid these three. They don't. They don't
yeah.
work.
Super avoid these three.
Yeah. I give these three a super F.
Yeah.
They do not work. So that will conclude the tier list. One final look at it. We've got our standard tier of Duo, 4D tier 1 with Flash, Diablo, Phantom, Basalt, Scythe, Wing, and Death. 4D tier 2, Guardian, Kreis, Fusion, Barriers, and Blitz. 4D tier 3, Big Bang, Lynx, and Beat, and Fang. The format Purgatory of Has, Scythe, Hell, Destroy, and Omega. Limited tier 0, Gravity. Limited tier 1 is Screw, Earth, Libra, Flame, Meteo, Absorb, Bakuchin, Lightning, Rock, Wyvang, and Balro. Tier 1.5 is Virgo, Phoenix, Jade, Leon, Fang, Pegasus, Samurai, and Duo. Tier 2 is Aquario, Guardian, Vulcan, Begeratos, Cosmic, Hasdeath, Firefuse. Tier 3 is Thermal, Quetzalcoatl, Killerkin, Burn, and Beat. Hasbro. Rogue is Pre-Hybrid Sagittario, Genbul, has Blitz, has Varieras, has Phantom, and has Destroy. Can you do Limbo Pasta?
Yeah. So Limbo Tier 1, we got Storm, Soul, Nightmare, Esculpio, El Drago, Killer, Gemios, Cyclone, Pisces. In Tier 2, we got Wolf, Infinity, Dark, Proto Nemesis, Gargle, Fury, Meteor Rush, Meteor Assault, Inferno, Ray, Bahamdia, Grand, Haswing, um, Galaxy, and Forbidden. Then in Limbo Tier 3, we have Hasjade, Efraid, Griff, Dragoon, Divine, Capricorn, Revisor, Bull, Hyper, and Counter. Limbo Rogue, we have Cyber, Ares, Erosia, Gorum, and Knight. Then finally, in Unusable, we have Saramanda, Mercury, Poison, Torch slash Cloud, and Midnight slash Crash.
So that will do it for this update of the tier list. This the formal update for the tier list should be rolling out on the 9th, which is when this video is being recorded, and the tier list itself should be, and this video should come out in the next few days. So until next time, I'm Deadly, and I have Pasta with me, and I'll see you then.